righty, here we are for the 7th episode of Breakfast of Champions, the only podcast on the internet that celebrates coffee, games, and life. And I'm joined by... Who am I joined by today? How would you like to introduce yourself today?
You know, I'm the hostess with the mostest here from coast to coast. Coming at you live, it's Kitsune Bites.
Hey, I love that. You know, one of my favorite programs to listen to when I was growing up was a radio show called Coast to Coast AM. Have you ever heard of that?
I have. I used to listen to that.
Yeah, we listened to that all the time. I listened to that growing up, and I don't know if my parents still listen to that, but that was something that I used to listen to even recently. And one of the radio hosts back then, his name was Art Bell, and I think he used to say, broadcasting from a bunker deep underground. Like, it's just, you know, I love that whole idea of where are they broadcasting from?
Right. Yeah, no, that was always something I would, because it was on later in the evening. And I would try my best to stay awake. I'd be at my grandma's with I'd get her radio from the kitchen table where she'd sit there, have her toast and coffee, and I would go pillage her radio and then try to pick it up. And man, it was fun. Also, her house is near the drive-in movie theater, so every once in a while I could get the movies on radio too. So that was always fun. I could, right. like it's 1925 over there. You know what I mean? Listening to Cars on radio.
I love that. So you turn on your radio and all of a sudden you hear ka-chow. Whoa.
Yeah. Yep.
I love that, man. I loved the drive-in growing up, and we only went a handful of times as far as I can remember. But I love the idea of you going and parking your car in a row, and you tune into the station, and it's usually crystal clear because they're broadcasting it right there. And you can turn the heater on. You could people can sit on the ground and stuff like that. That was one of my favorite things to do growing up. And they had the little concession stand with popcorn and candy and all that stuff. It was what a time to be alive, man. It was the Tri-Valley Drive-In or something in Tri-Valley, Pennsylvania, or it wasn't Higgins, Pennsylvania, but yeah, it's the one that I always used to go to back in the day. It's fun times.
It's a shame those almost all but have gone away, because it's going to the movies itself is a whole experience, but then going to a drive-in movie is a whole other feeling in itself. Oh,
for sure. Speaking of a whole other feeling that is in and of itself, thank you everybody for watching the show last week with Super Derek. We normally do the show live if you're watching after the fact. We normally do the show live, but we had a pre-recorded one that went direct to DVD or direct to YouTube rather. And it's actually our highest viewed episode yet, with well over 200 and something views. So thank you everybody for watching that. And we've had a couple new subscribers on the YouTube channel come over, and it's been really great. Just interacting with new people and having new people come over the show, and people watching live as well. So people who are watching live, we will get you to participate in the show at some stage here soon. Now, did you know one other form of viewer participation that we have, Aaron? Do you know what that is?
What's that?
It is the voicemail.
Oh yeah, the legendary voicemail.
What do you say we let this one fly here? So we've got a voicemail that was left on, I think, last Thursday. So let's see what kind of conversation topic can be spurred from this one.
Okay, so we're going to get a little controversial now. Pizza bites versus pizza bagels. You're welcome now that you're hungry. Let's get it on.
So pizza bites versus pizza bagels. Can we interpret that as...
Oh, boy.
What are those? Oh, man. Pizza rolls?
Totino's pizza rolls, man.
Do we just interpret that as pizza rolls versus pizza bagels, or the bagel bites?
Man, see, I've never had bagel bites, so I'm biased.
For real?
Yep.
Really? You've never had bagel? Oh my gosh.
Never had bagel bites. Dude, I just had a Hot Pocket for the first time last year.
What?
Yeah,
what planet are you living on, dude?
I mean, I've had other versions of Hot Pockets, like the Aldi brand. It's not quite a Hot Pocket, but it's something similar. I've had those, but like never had an actual branded Hot Pocket. Like growing up, I've never had them. It was always like kids cuisines and like I said, the super generic Hot Pockets. But like pizza rolls, man, those have a special place right here.
I love
right
those.
Here in my heart.
There's what I used to do is get a giant bag of them and microwave at least 20 at a time, knowing full well that some of them will still be cold and some of them will be hotter than like the surface of the sun. That's part of the experience. But I'm just so blown away that you haven't had a Hot Pocket until recently. I have a funny story with Hot Pockets, and I feel like I've told this before, but it'd be fun to encapsulate it on this program. But when I was getting older, and by older, I mean like transitioning from 19 to 20, and like your shoulders get more broad, you start to fill out and get more muscle and all that stuff. I mean, not that I work out, but it is what it is. I have good genes apparently. And I started to go from a small shirt to a medium. Like my small shirts were a little bit more snug. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to lose weight. What's going on here? So I switched from Hot Pockets to Lean Pockets. And I tell you what, the meatballs and mozzarella Lean Pockets, I don't know if anybody in this chat watching right now, or if anybody after the fact, if anybody's had those, I'm telling you what, those things are a vibe. Tell you, like they're so good.
Oh man, I might have to give those a shot.
Yeah. So there you go. So my personal opinion, I feel like in my older age, I prefer bagel bites, the pizza bagels, because when you cook them, like when you microwave them, they're like slightly rubbery. There's just a little bit more to chew on, and sometimes if you overcook them, they have a nice crunch to them.
See, I don't, man. It just doesn't sound as appealing as my pizza rolls. Like I've had so many stories involving pizza rolls. One of them when I was a lot attendant at 18 out of high school to hide from work. Me and the other lot attendants, we would go upstairs, make our pizza rolls, and then while we were waiting for them, we almost caught the building on fire. So that was,
oh my gosh,
that was fun. It's because, you have a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds with lacquer thinner and lighters. So I mean, what could go wrong? But yeah, that was working at the local Toyota dealership, and we would sit there and hide from the lot supervisor, and we would go make pizza rolls, and then whenever we'd make them, we would just run out the room with plates of pizza rolls while he's chasing after us. Man, it was.
That's funny. Well, look, we've got a poll in the chat happening right now. Which is better, pizza rolls or bagel bites? So let your voice be heard. I love, we've had the same voicemail caller here for the last few weeks, but thank you to that specific individual for creating really great discussion. We've had the Blast Processing versus Super Nintendo. We had Baja Blast versus coffee. Now we have a more, some would even consider more groundbreaking pizza rolls versus bagel bites. So we will, we'll let you know the findings there. So, how have you been? How's everything been going? I mean, like, because we haven't done a live show in 2 weeks, so we got to catch up, man.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's finally, the weather's finally turning in my favor. I love 70-degree weather here, so it's been perfect, minus the rain, but we need a little bit of something. And I have been out on the bike for, I don't know, the past 3-4 days, just cruising around town. I now have my own little, like what I deem my little race course. I go up and around, get close to the main road, then I go through I go up a hill, and then there's a little side road that goes through the trees, man, and it's so much fun. But I'll tell you what, dude, every time I go out on the thing, there's always a new experience. Like, the 2 days ago I went out, I was in between two giant dump trucks. And I say giant because when you're in a car, they don't look that big until you're sitting there in between them and you're like, oh God, here we go. so I had to deal with that, like in super low visibility with that. I was in an intersection trying to go right. They were going left, and I'm like, oh God, here's where I go to make my turn, and somebody just hits me head on. That was in my mind, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. So that was the one thing. And then Saturday, I finally got to use the milk crate I've installed on the bike.
Nice! Yeah, you gotta show me a photo of that.
I have a collapsible milk crate, and I went grocery shopping Saturday.
There you go.
I went out, did my thing, and that was a whole other thing, another experience, because the road I wanted to go home was closed, so I had to go across 2 different sets of train tracks. Had to deal with like 35 mile per hour traffic. Then I had to deal with some guy almost pulling out in front of me. It was a whole thing.
Oh my goodness.
But it was fun. It's the experience I need with that like unpredictability of everything.
Yeah.
But outside of that, let me tell you, dude, I've been playing 2 wonderful games. One of them being Spider-Man. The other one is Cult of the Lamb.
Yeah, I see everybody playing that right now. By the way, Cult of the Pizza Rolls, the roll poll was 12-2. So Pizza Rolls won with 86% of the vote. So there you go. So yeah, Cult of the Lamb. I see everybody playing that on Twitch. You posted a half-hour gameplay video on your YouTube channel as well, which considering Bites on YouTube, I mean, come on, if you're not there, then where are you? It's like apparently that's an Australian game as well. So like, what's the deal with that?
I didn't know it was Australian, but dude, let me tell you it. So are you familiar with the game Hades?
Yes.
Think of Hades, but with cute little woodland critters. And then you can rescue them, bring them back to your little like area, your little like field. You can build them tents, whatever. They sit there, that you put a statue up, they pray to you. Sometimes they'll come up to you and be like, "Hi, I just follow you so much. I just kill me in the middle of the night." And you're like, "Oh, okay, all right." Guess that's and it's like a quest you have to do.
What?
Or a mission. It's so wild. It's definitely a wild game. Think of like Hades / Metroid with a little bit of Animal Crossing, but then a little bit of like a Tamagotchi, because like they'll just go and they'll poop everywhere. So you got to go around and clean their poop and keep them happy. And if for some reason they want to go against the cult, you can throw them in stocks and re-educate them.
That is really strange, man. That reminds me.
Oh yeah,
there was an episode of South Park that we used to watch. My friend and I, growing up, it was the Woodland Critter Christmas special. Have you ever?
Oh my god,
that's the kind of vibe that gives me. Like that was probably at that time the most grotesque and like strange animated thing I've ever seen. It's just all these animals sacrificing themselves for whatever reason, and it was just like looking back at it. There's no way in hell I touch that with a 10-foot pole now, just because it's so weird. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But this is what the vibe you're giving me.
Yeah, so like it's kind of like that, but then the bigger picture is you're essentially this little lamb. You're the last of your kind.
Yeah,
and these other bishops want to sacrifice you to get their ultimate god on. All right,
weird.
Well, when you get killed, you end up going to the underworld, and the god that I guess they want to bring about is like, no, screw those people. You let me be the almighty powerful one, and we'll conquer them together. So essentially, you're the good guy fighting the bad guy. I mean, it's nothing but going around and converting heretics and cleansing the land and stuff. I mean, it's a wonderful time, dude. You need to play it.
Sounds like your average day in the South to me. I mean,
yeah, no doubt. It's like I played the demo of it, and I think they still have a demo up. So if anyone out there wants to play it, try the demo if it's still available. It runs really well on Steam Deck. You're getting a solid 60.
Really?
Switch, you're getting like so apparently on Switch, if you don't play handheld mode, you're gonna get like, if you're playing dock, you're getting anywhere from 20 to 30 frames. If you play handheld, you're getting 30 frames.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those.
You know, it's
one of those.
What was the game? The game that recently came out was the Chrono Cross Radical Dreamers Edition. Funnily enough, that game runs best on handheld mode on the Switch, other than everything else. The original PlayStation version runs the best. So it's It's not the weirdest thing to hear that the Switch in handheld mode is running that best. I know we've got Seth the Chocobo Hunter in chat. Don't bring that up. I'm really sorry. I know that's a bit of a sore point for some people. It's just like, this great game, and they finally bring it back, and it's just like a 6 out of 10 port. Like, there are some things that they changed, whatever. But yeah, I know they said they were going to patch that, and we talked about that last week in our episode with Super Derek. But I don't know if they're ever going to patch that. So there you go.
I don't know if Switch will ever hit 60 frames, man. Maybe the next console, but it's just wild to me to see that when you play docked, you're getting worse performance than when you play handheld. Like, I don't know.
Steam Deck, the way of the future.
Let me tell you, with Spider-Man, it really is. It's so cool to have this PS4 game, this big, vast open world, high speed, high action, all that stuff, just running fabulously on a handheld.
I gotta say, I've been dabbling a little bit more in handhelddom. But before I say anything else, I want to give a shout out to a friend of the show, Mrs. Nerdwire. I got a message from Nerdwire Plays the other day on Facebook, because we've been working on stuff for each other. So we have the new Breakfast of Champions animated emote for use for people watching Twitch if they're subscribed to the channel. So thank you to Nerdwire for making that. But he sent me a photo of a text message here from Mrs. Nerdwire, and she said, "I've listened to all of Eric's podcasts, and I feel like we're friends now." So shout out to Mrs. Nerdwire, our new best friend. Thank you for joining awesome. And listening to that. We really appreciate that. But I got to say, I've been dabbling a little bit more handheld recently, because I finished Xenoblade 3. Which was awesome. It took me 36 hours. That game had me in tears. The game had me laugh, and it was
that's great.
The most incredible adventure I've been on in a long time. And the reason why I also wanted to talk about this, because I said that I would shout this person out. David Cast RPGs left a comment on the latest episode with Super Derek, asking us to talk about more JRPGs and RPGs. So I'm going to do just that. So aside from the fact that my son's upstairs riding his little trike, which sounds like an earthquake, Xenoblade 3 was really awesome, and I love that, and I feel like I'm in such a JRPG vibe, and I can't wait to get the Steam Deck later in the year. Honestly, I'm super stoked to get that. But I went back in time, and I started playing Xenoblade Chronicles X on my Wii U, and I gotta say that game actually runs really well for a Wii U game. It came out in 2015. I think people weren't really appreciative of the Wii U, and I love the fact that you can actually play the game on the gamepad. But the problem is that you're chained to actually how long of a distance you have between the console and the gamepad. So I had the console out on our TV unit, and I went to go lay in the bed because my son's been sick this week, and within an hour of him falling asleep, he'll start screaming, and he just wants to be held. So I go in there with the gamepad. I can't play the game because I'm too far away. So I'm like, man, I really wish I had a Steam Deck so I can continue to sink some time into Xenoblade Chronicles X. I'm the furthest I've ever been. It's really cool. It's an interesting game. It's not a story heavy game. It's more of like a fetch quest kind of game. There is an overarching story, but I think it's more slowly drip fed rather than like, here's this monolithic JRPG where you kill God. Maybe you do kill God. I don't know. I haven't found out yet.
Oh, that's great. Now, was Xenoblade Chronicles X? Is that after Xenoblade Chronicles 1?
So Xenoblade Chronicles 1 came out in 2010.
Okay.
It originally came out in Japan, and they localized it through Operation Rainfall, and then they came out with Chronicles X in 2015 for the Wii U. It has nothing to do with the original series of 1, 2, and 3, which is now a trilogy that is capped. They are connected, but Chronicles X doesn't connect. So it's just the basic story of it is you're on planet Earth, and then there's an alien invasion or something like that, and then they blow up planet Earth, and there's only a few escape ships that go out into space, and you're floating in space for 2 years, and then your ship crash lands onto this planet Mira. And you find that you're not the only race on this planet. And then I'm only just starting to dig into that now. But it has the same combat as the Xenoblade series, which is really cool. Really fun combat once you figure out how it works. but I'm keen to know more of like what's going on in this world. So while you've been playing Spider-Man and Cult of the Lamb, I'm just like I'm off in space and Xenoblade Chronicles X world on my Wii U.
Dude, I'll tell you what. See, like hearing you talk about it, because I did see that in the Discord. You had started it, and I'm like, I really can't start another JRPG because I'm already wrapped up. I started Persona 4 on Steam Deck. Crisis Core, that one I'm working on. And then Xenogears. So I don't need to add another RPG to the mix.
Finish one first, man.
Yeah, tell me about it. Like and I'm with you. I don't know what it is. I've been getting heavy into JRPGs myself. So
that's good.
But outside of playing, how's everything else going your way?
I mean, yeah, it's going well. I was really sick for the last few days. And I'm finally feeling better, which is great. I finally feel like I have my freedom back. You know what I mean? So I gave myself a haircut last night. I cut ties with being sick. I cleaned the house. I folded like 5 loads of laundry. I mean, I've been a machine cleaning because the first thing you want to do after you've been sick and your whole family's been sick is just clean and just get kind of clean everything out. Aside from that, I do have some really cool news. So we're gonna skip the news bite segment this week, and we're gonna go straight into the topic after this because we need your help. If you're listening live, we need your help. But this is a really cool thing in my neck of the woods here. So this has cheered me up from being sick. Do you know what I'm holding in my hands right here, Aaron? Do you know what this is?
I'm pretty sure that's the. I'm gonna take a stab in the dark here. Is that the test print?
This is the test print for my latest album, Lifestream. So the pre-orders for that actually go live on Saturday, which I'm kind of nervous because I don't know how we're gonna do it. It'll be limited to 250 copies because this is my first label backed thing. So this is really cool. So this is a test print made by Pirates Press, and they're in the Czech Republic. So that's
awesome.
Man, I tell you what, it's such a trip being able to listen to your music on vinyl. So
I bet. I mean,
I love it, and I'm so fueled by creating things now for vinyl specifically because I gotta say it's hard work trying to get like YouTube and stuff kicking off for you. To be able to make income, so you have to kind of like look other ways or elsewhere. So being able to partner with a record label to sell music is a hell of a thing. So I'm super stoked for that.
That's really cool, man. And I'm honestly nervous about Saturday when that pre-order goes live because it seems like there is a ton of interest in that one.
I wouldn't be I don't want to sound like cocky or confident because I don't know.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it sells out because it's because one thing that is important for things being label backed is it has the ability to be seen by a wider audience. So we have 66J in the chat. Are they coming in different colors? So it's only going to be the one color variant, which is called the Holy Materia color. So it'll be like a transparent kind of greeny. If they sell out of the 250, then there will be other color repressings. So possibly a different material color variant, something like that. So we'll see how we go. But I'm a little bit nervous. Honestly, I'm quite nervous because this is good because not only is it going to get more eyes on the Retro Game Remix side project, but like I want those people to funnel in and find us through the show. It's one big machine of everybody like being visible. So
you better watch out. You don't turn into little Shinra over there.
Just call me Rufus. Let's flick over to our topic, and this is where we need some audience participation. So we need your help. So what are we doing in today's topic, Aaron? What's the goal?
So today we are ranking consoles. And not just, any consoles, all the consoles. Give us all of them. We are doing all the generations up to 2020. So everything but the Steam Deck is on the table.
Yep. So I thought that this would be cool to kind of start from the beginning of consoles, and we would just rank them. And I want to be really, really harsh here. I want to rank them not based on any personal feelings I have on these consoles, but how these consoles maybe changed the landscape of how we play and other things like that. So I got to say, like, well, let's see. We have our great friend Krosif, who was a really great caller on episode 1, by the way. I hope everything's going though. Krosif, if you ever had an autobiography, I think you should call it String Theory.
Oh my God.
So let's go ahead and have a look here. So what's one of the first consoles that we can look at? So let's just say Atari 2600. Okay. So Krosif in the chat said S tier straight away. So what are your thoughts on Atari 2600?
You know, I know thanks to one of Atari's games, we had a nice, wonderful video game crash. So yeah. I kind of feel I see it, but here's the thing: I feel like without the video game crash that was created, I kind of feel like we wouldn't have the stuff where we're at now. You know what I mean? Like because Nintendo was a thing, but they had to kind of rebrand their wording in the way that they marketed everything. So it's kind of like one of those, you know, I'd put it in A. I would put it in A. Yeah, I would. Me personally, I would put it in A.
A for Atari. So the Atari 2600 came out September 11th, 1977, but it was preceded by the Fairchild Channel F. Do you know anything about the Fairchild Channel F?
So I feel like that one was wasn't that the first like cartridge based console to be developed or something like that?
Let's go have a look. A Fairchild Channel F.
Because I feel like the carts for that were yellow.
They were yellow, and I had an opportunity to get one a couple of years ago, and I didn't, and I should have. But the Fairchild Channel F was sold at a retail price of $169.95 back in 1976, which is the equivalent to $810 in 2021, and that could be even higher because of inflation and all that stuff. So there you go. So it was Fairchild Channel F. Definitely console. It looked more like a tape deck than anything else. So I would, I'm going to go ahead and give that a. Because we have quite literally every console here, and there's like the 70s and 80s are going to be a little obscure for some of you younger guys out there. So Fairchild Channel, I'd probably give it a good. I give it a good C.
Okay. All right.
Let's see. I'm looking at a timeline here of video game consoles released and. Seeing what else we have. So we have the Intellivision, which came out in 1980, which was the next one after 2600. Do you have any experience with the Intellivision?
I do not know. Was that I've never seen one, but I've heard them, and I don't know if that was the one I'm thinking of that had like the overlays that went on your TV.
No, that was the Vectrex. We will get to that. So the Intellivision was released by Mattel in 1979 or 1980, and it was a direct competitor to the Atari 2600. So more than 3 million consoles were sold, and it was ranked as 14 out of 100 of the greatest. It was ranked 14th by IGN of the greatest video game consoles of all time. So it obviously was a popular console back then. It was one of those consoles that had the keypad controller, very similar to my favorite ColecoVision, which I'm wearing the shirt of right now.
That's awesome.
So what do you think we give that one?
So I have a picture of the Intellivision here on my end, and yeah, that's wild looking. I'd put that in C as well.
Okay, that's fine. Let's skip around here because this timeline here doesn't have everything on it, but and I don't think. Okay, so yeah, ColecoVision. So let's do ColecoVision next. Do you have any experience with the ColecoVision? I love the ColecoVision, man. It's one of my favorites. I just think it's like the coolest thing.
So the ColecoVision, I didn't actually get a chance to see the console, but my brother had the house that he bought had in the attic. It was just an empty box, an empty ColecoVision box.
Okay.
So that's as far as my knowledge goes for that.
I love the ColecoVision. ColecoVision was I did a video on ColecoVision 8 years ago now, and it was to date I think probably my favorite video that I've done. And it was a really cool console that tried to bridge that experience of arcades and home consoles. And essentially their goal was to bring the arcade home. And they had a lot of different peripherals, like the racing wheel, like a mouse trackball.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of different games. But more importantly, that was one of the consoles that Nintendo published or licensed out Donkey Kong on. So one of my favorite versions of Donkey Kong is on the ColecoVision. So I would go ahead and say, I'm going to go ahead and say ColecoVision is an A.
Okay. All right.
There isn't anything yet that I find as S tier.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit before we get into anything S tier.
Oh, Market Mike says B since it was a mixed bag. Interesting. So similar to the Intellivision, it has like a number pad controller, and it had overlays that you can put on top of the controller as well. And they also came out with a ColecoVision flashback years later, which I actually have.
Really?
I had that sent to me. It's from the States or something, whatever. DJ Bob says S for shut up and put it in S. Well, let's go ahead and we'll leave it in A there as a bridging ground from Marky Mark and DJ Bob with B and S respectively. So let's see what else we have. So we've got a couple other different consoles here. There's a lot of like shovelware. You've got the Atari 5200, which played 2600 games as well as its own things. Atari 7800. I'm gonna put those in C, man, because I don't know what those are all about.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good move.
There's a couple of other older ones here. We've got the Magnavox Odyssey and the Magnavox Odyssey 2.
All right.
You have any experience with those?
Negative, but I'm looking at a picture of the Odyssey 2, and it looks like a console ripped right out of the Houston Space Center.
It looks like a giant typewriter, doesn't it?
You know what? It kind of looks like those VTech laptops that you had as a kid to learn how to spell. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, those were Educonsoles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go. Oh Lord, B, because it was so expensive. Okay, well let's go ahead and throw those in the C tier. I feel like because of the ones that I don't have a whole lot of experience with, I'm aware of like because there was so many things in the 80s back then. And I don't have a whole lot of hands-on experience with those. I'm happy to say they were fine, and I'm sure they served their purpose back then, but I can't rank them D or E, like super low, because I just don't know. Bally Astrocade, I don't know anything about that.
Got me, man.
Coleco Telstar Arcade, I don't know anything about that. Emerson Arcadia 2001. See, these just look kind of junky, and I could be totally wrong.
Well, I mean, look at how many you're finding there that are like shovelware of consoles, and then it makes sense why the market crashed the way it did.
Oh, for sure. Let me see. We've got Microvision, Epoch, GPC, Adventure Vision. Like these are all, I'm going to say these are all D, because like, I feel like they served their purpose back then, but like they're nothing really truly, riveting if we're looking at them now.
And I mean, somebody enjoyed them, but that somebody sure wasn't me.
So, okay. Now we've evened out the playing field a little bit. We've got what the heck is a Super Micro? That looks like a laptop of like that we would have had in school.
Oh God.
Okay. Here's one that I know. Do you know about the Vectrex?
I do. I do know, like I got a chance to see one at at last year's retro game con out here, and it looks like a little 80s Mac just the way it's set up, like or just like a mini arcade system or whatever. But it's pretty cool. I mean, the graphics on it look cool. I don't know too much, but I got a chance to play around with it, and that in itself was pretty wild.
You can just totally disagree with me here, but Vectrex is S tier for me. And my reasoning behind that is ColecoVision attempted to bring the arcade home, but Vectrex was quite literally an arcade machine that you could buy. And I have one back home in the States. I remember for like my 20th or 21st, one of those birthdays, I asked my parents for a Vectrex for my birthday, and they're probably thinking, what the hell is this kid doing? So what it is, the Vectrex is a little tabletop CRT television, and it displayed all the games in vector graphics. So essentially lines. So you have to bear in mind when the Vectrex came out, it was 1982. It was in America in 82, and then Europe and Japan in 83. This was a freaking sick console. So it displayed all the graphics in black and white lines, but every game you bought had a colored overlay that you could put over top of the screen, and it had a little controller that was like a horizontal controller with a little stick and some buttons. So like quite literally back in the 80s, that would have been an arcade experience that you could have brought home. I have one. I have a couple of games and a couple of overlays. Apparently they are so hard to find. And I think back even when I grabbed one, they were around about $400 or $500 on eBay back then. And that was like in 2012 or 2013. I'd actually be quite curious to see how much they're going for now. So if I just go to ebay.com and type in Vectrex, $899, buy it now. $1,000
I'll get right on it.
The best way to play the Vectrex, in my opinion, and probably the most affordable way, is to get yourself a multi-cart. I think you can do that with an SD card, because like even if I'm looking at a one game here with the overlay, like $40, $70, and a complete in box one was like $378. So I think for what the Vectrex did back then, and it's a completely like unknown console now, I think it's like one of the coolest things that we'll find on our list today.
I can agree with that. I mean, just playing the little bit that I did was wild. I mean, they had asteroids in there, and it was cool. It was the neatest little thing. I actually had to wait in like a small line to play it, and it was worth the wait.
Absolutely would have been. Okay, so we are like one or two consoles away from actually getting into the ones that a lot of people will know.
Okay.
What about the SG-1000? Do you know anything about that?
The SG-1000? I have no clue. I'm trying to like find it on my little list here, and you got me, man.
The SG-1000 is Sega's first entry into the video game console business.
Oh, wow.
SG-1000 came out in 1983 in Japan, and what else? I think 83 everywhere else. And it's kind of like a Master System, a predecessor to the Master System, and it doesn't have like a standard control deck that we know. It has like I think two side buttons on the left and right, the top left and right of the controller, which you would have held in like your left hand, and then you would have steered the joystick with your right hand. I don't know of any notable games for the SG-1000. I know the Sonic definitely was not on SG-1000. That debuted on the Master System.
Oh my God.
SG-1000 games. What is there anything notable for that? Space Invaders, Galaga, Lode Runner, Q*bert, Guzzler, just kind of like all those kind of games.
Congo Bongo, Sega Galaga.
Okay, so really like next to no software on that.
Pretty much.
So what do you say we give the SG-1000?
I'd probably put it in D.
Okay. We'll give it the D. Okay, by the looks of it, we don't have any like older, more obscure ones, so we've ranked those accordingly. So what's next in the timeline here, man? Do you know what might be coming up next?
I have a feeling it's the toaster.
The old toaster. Where do we rank the NES?
See, it's a hard one because while it was a wonderful system in all that it did and for video games, I just don't know that I would consider that one S tier.
Interesting.
I would put it A tier.
Let's see. Kensel in the chat says S. So the what about the color TV game 15?
Oh, that's a double S tier.
That's a good one. So the thing with the NES and the reason why the NES was really a pivotal. Is that the right word? Pivotal point?
Yeah.
It was a turning point for consumerism and video games and tech and pop culture, because after all of these consoles that we've ranked like C, D, there was just a lot of junk out there in the world at that time. And it caused what was known as the video game crash in 1983. And a couple consoles like the ColecoVision, I think, came out slightly after that point or around that point. You know, they kind of like just barely squeaked through. But you guys remember hearing about, you know, a bunch of Atari cartridges being buried in like a landfill and all that stuff. Like a lot of people were down on video games. A lot of consumers were down on video games. And the NES, when that came out, what was it really? Was that 1985?
Let me see. North America in 85, Japan in 83.
Yeah, so in Japan it was known as the Famicom, as the family computer, because Japan likes to shorten everything. Like McDonald's in Japan is called McDonald's.
Really?
Yep. And like arcades are called Geisens, as a game center.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. So Famicom. So the reason why this is shaped so differently than Famicom, which was a top loader console, they branded this to look like a tape deck. So when this came out, was really the only thing that saved video games from being just lost into obscurity. So where do you think we rank this one, man? So this is not an S tier one to you?
I'm sticking to my guns, man. I'm saying A. Okay. I'm saying A.
Okay. So we're gonna rank that A. So the Vectrex is above the NES.
I mean, the Vectrex had something unique going for it. The NES was an 8-bit system, color, that you know how like Atari was in color. You know what I mean? The graphics were a little bit better, but there wasn't like anything crazy going on with it. Like while it was very beneficial to video game history and video game just as a whole, it just doesn't feel like an S tier console.
Man, I think I'll have to. I might have to agree to disagree there. I feel like the gravitas of the NES, I mean, just has a really special place in my heart. And I think what we mentioned in episode 3 with Chris from Microgame, like that's one of the older consoles that you can still get now and collect for and grab games, you know, not necessarily not cheaply, but more affordably. And yeah, so like this is a great one. We have Mila in the chat. The cartridges were bigger due to trying to appeal to American audiences, even though the game board is under half the size of the cartridge. So if you compare like Famicom cartridges to NES cartridges, I mean, internally they're the same thing, but they're much taller and they look like tapes that you can just load in and slide in. So I think we'll have to agree to disagree there for the A tier on the NES. So there you go. See what we have next in the timeline. We have the Sega Master System. Now this is I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Master System because it wasn't anything that I played growing up. What about you?
No, I know nobody I knew growing up had a Master System. It was either an NES, SNES, or Genesis.
I see. It was more of a European thing, and we have our friend 66JD in the chat from Wales saying S tier. Some insanely great games on the system. So I've owned a Master System before. I've actually owned 3 Master Systems.
Oh, wow.
I had one in the States, and then I bought 2 here. I bought a Master System 1 and a Master System 2, which is a smaller version, and it has like a flap top that you pull back, and then you can put your cartridges in.
Oh, wow.
So huge. It was huge in the UK and not super huge in the US. So where do you think we rank this one? Hands down beat the NES. 66JD says, wow, that's a bold statement.
Well, see, like, so if you've played anything on Game Gear, you've played Master System games. Because a lot of the Master System stuff got ported to the Game Gear, and I've played I own a Game Gear and a bunch of games for it. So they were good games. Man, I don't know if they're S tier worthy.
I want to, because I want to be really picky with what we hand out S tier to, because I don't want to be like throwing everything in S. I want like maybe only 3 or 4 consoles to be sitting up top in S tier.
And I agree, and I just don't think Master System was S tier. I mean,
so what do you say? Do we put it in B then?
Yeah, I throw it in B.
66JD, I know, I'm so sorry to break your heart, man, but I'm just trying to think, like, because of the worldwide popularity that the NES had, like, there, in my opinion, there's no way that it's going to rank higher than the NES.
Right.
Although some could argue that the Sega Master System had that same appeal in Europe. So it's all a difference of where you grew up. So there you go. What else do we have as far as 80s stuff here? We have okay, we can get into some handhelds here now.
Oh, now you're speaking my language.
So now this is kind of like, this is the era that we grew up in here. Now that we're coming to the late 80s, early 90s. We've got the Game Boy.
All right. So the Game Boy, I feel the Game Boy would be S tier.
I don't disagree with that at all.
Reason being, you had the Atari Lynx, you had the Game Gear, you had the Turbo Express, all of those wonderful, wonderful, wonderful consoles, but they went up against the Game Boy, and the Game Boy just did everything so much better. And the only downfall, no color and no backlit. Or backlit screen. Sorry. So like, yeah, it had a little bit of flaws, but at least you only needed a handful of batteries, and you could play for 10 hours instead of like an hour and a half with a Game Gear or an Atari Lynx.
Yeah, I think look at the sales numbers of the Game Boy. So the Game Boy sold 118.69 million units. Some would say nice to that number. So that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, when you think of, Nintendo games being put in your hands, and essentially, they're yes, lesser versions than NES, but I mean, like, for what you were able to get handheld, I mean, is insane. And I've always felt that, especially for handheld consoles, they're like a couple of years after. So like, let's say the NES comes out, then you have the Game Boy coming out a couple years after that, and like they're kind of comparable in terms of like the graphics and the experience that you can have. Same thing for the Game Boy Color. I mean, it's not too dissimilar to like a Super Nintendo, or in the Game Boy Advance, not too dissimilar from whatever else. So there you go. So I like the Game Boy being an S tier. So let's do a shootout of handheld consoles here. So next we have the Atari Lynx.
I'd give it a B. It was a unique console because you could play it in landscape or portrait mode, and it was going up against the Game Boy. It was a cool thing, but like I don't think it held its own.
It's only sold 3 million units compared to the 118 million for the Game Boy. I think, I mean, at that time, I mean, it's a lot of handheld consoles were thrown into the market, and it's not too dissimilar from what happened 10 years prior in the 80s, where there was just an overabundance of home consoles. Now in the early 90s, there is an overabundance of handheld consoles. So from there, if we want to just kind of knock out some of these handhelds, we have the Game Gear. So Game Gear was meant to be like a portable Genesis or a portable Mega Drive. I've had one, and man, that thing is like holding a brick, isn't it?
Yeah, the Game Gear was something I used to play all my friends because I was always the Nintendo kid. So I had Super Nintendo, a Game Boy Color, Advance, all of those. I would sit there and try to angle my screen in the sunshine while they're sitting on a hot summer day in the shade with their, showing off their color backlit screen. But it's cool for what it is. The fact Sega put something out like that in a portable for the time was pretty cool. The accessories for the Game Gear were cool. I have one of those like messenger bags for the Game Gear. I have that down in the basement. So like it had a whole bunch of cool things, but that particular system, I'd give it an A, because it held its own as far as games per like system. Like, the Game Boy had its wonderful lineup. The Game Gear had its wonderful lineup. I'd put it in A.
I think the one thing that would knock it down from A for me would be the amount of batteries that you had to load into that thing. I mean, we've got Mark in the chat saying B for trying, but user experience lower with batteries draining and how many it took. But a lot of its games did rock. So like, so if we want to compare it to like the Atari Lynx, is the Atari Lynx and the Game Gear, are they really on the same level? Like, would you be willing to give them that? So like, if you were going to go for one, what would you go for?
I mean, if I saw them both out at a flea market and it was one of those, well, which one can you get? You can only get one. I'd go Game Gear. Even though I really want an Atari Lynx. If I could find one cheap enough, I'd get it. But
so let's do this. Let's take Game Gear and put that in B, and let's get Atari Lynx and put that in C.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that's a little bit more fair because, I mean, if you're comparing Game Boy and Game Gear, like, of course, the Game Gear is always going to be much lower than, I feel like the Lynx is lower than that. So, let's see what else we have. So that's kind of it for portable consoles back then. If we want to go back to home consoles, we have the Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah. Now, see, that was my first video game console. So, like, as much as I want to say S,
you're not going to say S for Super Nintendo?
As much as I want to say S, man.
Oh my god!
So, like, yeah, you had 16-bit graphics. You had wonderful games. I mean, you had Star Fox on it. That looked amazing. But it didn't really do anything different. The only thing it did different was 16-bit. It didn't do anything groundbreaking. You know what I mean? It didn't. There wasn't really a big shakeup when that came out. Because I want to say that sold less than the NES did.
Let me see. NES sales. See, for me, Super Nintendo is an S tier, far and away more than NES. Let's see. So let's see. NES sold 61 million. So SNES sales. SNES sales numbers.
Looks like 49 mil.
List of best-selling Super Nintendo. Interesting. I gotta say, I'm totally I'm kind of taken aback by your not willing to throw in S tier.
it's hard. So like if we went off of like personal experience and all that, oh dude, I would be saying that's a god tier console.
Well, then let's throw it in god tier, because if we've got Kenzelby and DJ Bob saying literal perfection. Its art style is still emulated today. So let's just say,
absolutely.
Put it this way: if we want to talk about the influence that a specific console and an influence a specific generation has had, I mean, even the game that you mentioned earlier, Cult of the Lamb, like that's still like a sprite based kind of like pixel looking game. And those, the NES started that, but the Super Nintendo just took that experience and just blew it out of the water. I mean, if you had Mode 7 graphics, you also had some of the cartridge expansions, like with Kirby Superstar and Yoshi's Island, like all that stuff. Those extra things, like what that Nintendo console was doing at that time was a technical powerhouse, compared to like the Sega Genesis. So I would fight for the SNES to be S tier, but I don't know.
I mean, I'm happy if it's an S tier because me fanboying over it. Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. It's one of those, like, to me personally, like from a technological standpoint, I don't see a lot of S tier till the next generation of consoles.
Really?
Yeah, that's at least me personally, just because of the things that those consoles were doing. I mean, like I said, you had Star Fox on Super Nintendo. That was a 3D looking game, and it looked wonderful, played wonderfully. But I don't know. It was still like that older. Here's a D-pad and a couple buttons.
I think we have to think of it at that point in time, like what that console did then. I think I kind of think I'm prepared to die on this hill. I think if I'm ever gonna say this is the one, this is the decision I make, and then everything else we can kind of settle the debate. I mean, like the controller layout, like it's still copied today. I mean, it refined.
Oh yeah.
We have the NES controller here, and then we have.
Oh, here.
We have the old Super Nintendo controller. Like, they were.
I got mine right here.
It just took that and, refined that experience. So, you have one as well. Sorry, I'm watching the stream because my eyes are on the.
Oh no, you're good. I mean, think of it this way: the Super Nintendo D-pad is still the best D-pad out there.
100%. It's never been replicated, and even like the Switch, controllers and all that stuff. You can't get that same experience. Like there's a reason why when I fell in love with the Super Nintendo in high school, I literally have never looked back, and I've spent thousands of dollars on freaking Super Nintendo games recently. So I think that's a hill I'll have to die on. So I hope you will allow me to die on that hill.
No, but see, I agree, man. I will sit there and hold your hand while you're going, saying yes, sir. Super Nintendo is S tier.
Okay.
I could go either way, man. I could go, yeah, it's S tier, or it's A tier. I'm either or on it.
Fair enough. So let's go ahead and flip over to the competition at the time, which was the Sega Genesis.
Okay. That
one I'll easily put in A tier.
Oh, that's an E tier all day, man. It's Sega. Sega sucks. I was a Nintendo kid, man. Sega's garbage. Why would you play a generic console when you could have Mario? I mean, come on.
I don't disagree with you. I would say Sega Genesis is B tier.
Absolutely. And I can agree with that.
The reason why is like I don't love the Genesis. I love what the Genesis stands for, and I like what they attempted to do, and they literally tried to take on a giant.
Oh, absolutely.
But it might just be I don't want my personal opinion to creep in there too much. But I just feel like, what they did and what they went up against, they were never going to win. They got close. And the whole blast man, I don't know. I'm torn. Like, with the chat saying, 66JD, oh my god, you guys are killing me. So many arcade ports. I don't personally love the Genesis, and I have tried. And I think my favorite Genesis game, aside from the Sonic games, are Gunstar Heroes. But aside from that, there's like nothing on there.
What's the one? Is it Crusaders of Senti or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's like the Zelda clone.
That one looked cool, but I mean, outside of that, like I wasn't really even a Sonic kid either. I was like only recently got into Sonic. So if you were to ask me which one wins, Mario or Sonic, I'm Mario all day until we get into the later stuff here.
True. All right. Well, what is it? Chat. What should we put the Sega Genesis in there? Oh, Streets of Rage. I mean, this is the thing is I don't gravitate towards those Sega games, man. I just don't.
Same.
A tier. Okay. We'll put the Genesis in A tier. 02K says S. At least. Okay. All right. So we did say we needed your help, chat, today. So there you go. A tier. We'll leave it in A tier. Let's see what else we have. Is there anything else from that period of time? Do
they have the Nomad on there? Because that was a pretty interesting little handheld.
The Sega Nomad the Sega Nomad is not on there. But I would probably put the Sega Nomad in a good B tier because
same.
It expanded on what the Game Gear could do, making a portable Genesis essentially. So that's pretty cool. There's a couple other ones here that I want to get into before we move on. The TurboGrafx 16.
Yo, that's one, man. That is any of the TurboGrafx consoles, man, whether it be the Turbo Express or the Graphics 16. So when I went to pick up Crisis Core a couple weeks ago, like the physical version, there was the TurboGrafx 16 and 10 games for it.
Oh, nice.
The games were $80 a piece. The console was $400.
They're not cheap, man.
I sat there and I'm like, I will be quickly divorced if I show up at the house with a TurboGrafx 16 in all games. They also had a Turbo Express there, which, man, that's one I would love to have because that was just like a.
Those are beautiful.
Oh, dude, they're a wonderful little machine, and if you can find one somewhat broken because the capacitors and all that go bad, you can find them for $500 and fix it and have a nice little handheld to play those. What were they? Hue cards?
Yep.
Oh man, see, like that's a holy grail system for me. So I would put TurboGrafx 16. I would put that in S. Same with the Turbo Express would be A. Oh yeah. That had a lot of the games for TurboGrafx 16 were a good bit of those were from the arcades or other ports or other versions of a game. So there's a ton for it, and
interesting.
Just the overall uniqueness of it. I mean, you had something I want to say the thickness of a Switch cart, but the size of a business card.
Yeah, it was like a proper card. I mean, like I borrowed I bought a TurboGrafx many years ago, and I borrowed a ton of games from Chris from Microgame back on episode 3. If I'm looking at the games or the software that are on there, like I've played Blazing Lasers, Bonk's Adventure. They've got Airzonk, Splatterhouse, Newtopia. Yep. Newtopia is the kind of Zelda clone there. But it's I feel like the TurboGrafx is what you buy if you want to play Bonk. They've also got Keith Courage and Alpha Zones. I reviewed that game many years ago. I doubt anybody has watched that. There's no real Castlevania Rondo of Blood. That's the one that you really want to get that system to play that game. You've got Ease 1 and 2. So I mean, like there's not a lot of like real heavy hitter games on there. I mean, you've got Street Fighter 2.
I want to say the heavy hitters for those, it's like the movie The Big Lebowski, man. When it came out, not a lot of people were on board with it, but then later in the years it became this thing, and I feel like that's how the TurboGrafx 16 is. It's turned into like this, oh my god, like they were doing what with this thing back then? Yeah.
It was okay. All right. Well, I'll allow. So if you let me put Super Nintendo on S tier, I'll let you do TurboGrafx.
Okay.
On S tier. I would probably put TurboGrafx in. I'd probably put it in B tier, honestly, purely because of the amount of games that are on there. And like I said, they're not like real heavy hitter games. Like TurboGrafx is a bonks machine. Like if you want to play bonk, then you go buy TurboGrafx. But I'll let you do that then. Okay, so we have 2 more consoles here before we get on to the real heavy hitting gen. We've got the Philips CDI. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in a D tier. Okay. I don't think I'm gonna get any disagreement with that. And we've also got the 3DO. I think I'm gonna put the 3DO in the E. Personally.
Okay. All right.
Do you have any experience with the 3DO?
No, I do not. So I trust your judgment on this one.
It was the first kind of console that was meant to be. It was a disc-based console back when it came out when did it come out? 1990. Was it 95? No, 93 in North America. So that came out when I was born. So I was born in the year of the 3DO. So it was meant to be an interactive multiplayer thing. So, a lot of games had like those QuickTime events and all that stuff. I don't know. Like and there was so many different variations of them. You had a Panasonic one, you had a Gold Star one, you had a Sanyo one. It was just licensed to a bunch of different manufacturers. It was just kind of like shovelware of of consoles, really. So yeah, it's very famous for the what was it? What was Link's was it Link game on that? Zelda? Was that Zelda on 3DO or was that the CDI?
Might have been CDI. Because wasn't CDI the one with it was like Panasonic and Apple or something?
Let me see.
Or the Philips CDI.
It's a Zelda CDI, yeah. So that was on there. Okay.
It's funny to look at a picture of the 3DO because the front of it kind of looks like a N64 a little bit.
It does, yeah. It kind of because it has like the circle kind of base at the on either side. I feel like the 3DO was really just it was a hunk of junk. Really, that's the most family friendly way that I can put it. So we'll leave that there. I'm happy to say 3DO is E tier because of how much garbage they shoveled on that thing and how many iterations of that console they came out with. So if I was ever to go like real super into retro collecting again, bless my wallet if I ever do that. 3DO is not one that I'm going for. There might be. I just want to double check here. As far as excuse me, we've got one more here before we move on to the other gen. I know that you're going to start throwing S tiers out. The Neo Geo.
Oh, now see that one brought the arcade to your house.
It really did.
And really I would most certainly put the Neo Geo in A tier.
In A tier.
I mean, I would even go as far to say potentially borderline S tier, like end of the road. Plus. Yeah, A plus if that was a thing. A plus, man, because it what it did was it brought the arcade experience to you. It came with a fight stick. Now you have to buy those separate, but it came with a fight stick. It had wonderful games. I mean,
well, it's a game. It's a console that was released new. They had the what was it? It was the Neo Geo. There was a newer version of it that was released a couple of years ago. It was released by SNK, and I remember pre-ordering it a couple of years ago from GameStop. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember what it was called, but there was enough interest in the Neo Geo to warrant a newer iteration of that. So very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
It's a wonderful little console.
Atari Jaguar. Where do we put that one really quickly? Because I realize that's still on the board here.
D.
Do you know the Atari Jaguar? Some dental company bought the molds for that console, and if you've ever been into a dentist office, you can find like scanners or something like that look like Jaguars.
Really?
Yep. And there was also, this is a little controversial. Coleco came out with somebody bought the rights to the Coleco name, and they tried to come out with a new console called the Coleco Chameleon that had the same mold as the Jaguar. That was a total cluster. So there was a lot of drama on YouTube about that a couple years ago. Anybody who knows about that, there you go. So okay, now we're kind of at the point here where we're into the PS1 era, N64 era. So let's go ahead and start with which one came out first? Was it the PS1 that came out first?
Yeah, because everybody tried to partner with PlayStation and then they all backed out, and then Sony said, you know what? Forget y'all.
Yeah. So PS1 came out 3rd of December 1994 in Japan. That's crazy, man. That's PS1's almost 30 years old.
I know.
So where do we rank PS1 on the hierarchy of consoles based on purely because what it did back then?
I'm going with S tier because growing up, my first console was Super Nintendo. Then I remember a couple Christmases later, I ended up with a Game Boy. Then, like another Christmas, I wound up with a PlayStation, having no clue what it was. Being this little kid going, okay, all right, okay. I don't know what this thing is. It's cool. It's CD based. I turned it on and I was blown away. I mean, it was, you had, what was that, 32-bit?
Yeah.
32-bit graphics. So you had a bump in graphics. You had just about full 3D for the worlds. I mean, I know the demo disc I played as a kid. It had Final Fantasy VII on it, and I was like, "What is this garbage game even on?" But you see stuff like that. You had Tomb Raider. You had I want to say there was like Sega Rally, like a rally car racing that was there. Jet Moto 2. All of those looked great. I mean, the music you had, the music was wonderful. The graphics looked crazy. I mean, it was the first game system to use a memory card, at least to my knowledge, because everything else was saved on the card.
That's right, because it was all CD based.
If you were lucky enough, yeah. So I would definitely, personally, I'd put it in S.
You know, I really loved the PS1 growing up, and I've gone back to it because I recently started PS1 collecting. God bless my wallet. The PS1 is a really great console, and I've just started to realize like the real the horizon of games that are on that console. I mean, it was a JRPG powerhouse. And even last episode with Super Derek, he said his favorite console was PS1. And and he's not wrong, because I spent more time playing PlayStation 1 than N64 growing up. If I really think about it, there's some people in the chat saying the PS1 was really great for audio as well, and which is true, because I think the first edition of the PlayStation 1 that came out had the composite inputs or outputs directly on the back. It's called like the audiophile version, so it had the red, white, and yellow hookups right on the back of that console, rather than like the PS1 AV cord. So there you go. So I'm quite happy to have PlayStation 1 and S tier, purely because it was a Final Fantasy machine for me growing up. And you had Crash Bandicoot and Metal Gear Solid and Klonoa. I mean, there's so many great games. I mean, I'll show you. This is really naughty here, but we've got Klonoa for the PS1. I mean, that's a really great one. Don't sleep on that. I think this is better on PS1 than the newer one. And you've got Spyro as well. I mean,
Spyro, Crash. I mean, they had some wonderful games for a company that was dropped twice by two big names. That a company that was dropped twice, going out on their own. The lineup they had for launch, the games they had later on, I feel like they blew a lot of the competition out of the water for the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if we want to talk about competition, because I could talk about PS1 all day.
Same.
N64 was my first ever console, but I'd quite happily put N64 in A tier.
I was going to say that's definitely A tier.
And the reason why is like the N64 has some great games. But I feel like a lot of the games that I loved were first or kind of second party games, with Rare. Because I mean, we had all the Mario games, we had Mario Kart. Diddy Kong Racing is an S tier game, and it is like top 3 games in the N64 library. It is better than Mario Kart 64. But I mean, I got to give props to Mario 64 for really bringing that 3D collectathon platforming thing to the forefront. I mean, that was my first game ever. But it wasn't the JRPG machine, that the PS1 was. You can't really compare the two because the breadth of games is so vast.
Yes.
The libraries are so vastly different. I mean, you do have like some collectathon platformers and stuff, but N64 had like Banjo and Donkey Kong 64 and
Conquer.
But I feel like if I was to buy 10 games on the N64, I could probably buy all of my 10 favorites and then I wouldn't really need anything else. Whereas with the PS1, easily I could get like 10 or more than 10, like at least 30 games to be content. I mean, it also had GoldenEye as well.
Yeah. No, GoldenEye was solid. I mean, because I was the Nintendo kid that ended up with a PS1. So I had PlayStation 1 while my friends had N64. So when I would go hang out with them, we would play Smash, Mario Kart, GoldenEye. That was it. When I would come home, I'm jumping into Spyro, Crash, Jet Moto 2, all of those, and it was nice to have something myself that was different than what everybody else was going for, because I got a chance to experience a little bit, dip my toes in both pools.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Milla in the chat saying N64 was definitely the party / pick up and play console, which I totally agree.
Yes.
I mean, you had your Mario Party games, like those were really good, and I feel like as far as like the immersive single play experiences go, PlayStation 1 was better, and you had all your Crash Bandicoots, you had your JRPGs. There's a couple of sleeper hits on the PlayStation 1 that I personally would like to make a video about soon. But Guardians Crusade is one great RPG or JRPG. It's kind of like a beginner's RPG, but like experiences like this were kind of like, not saying that Quest 64 was based on this, but Quest 64 is kind of like, you have so many different role playing games that were much better on PS1. So there you go. Let's see, what else did we have in that era? Okay, here's a good one. Sega Saturn. Sega Saturn came out around the same time as PlayStation 1 and N64. Sega Saturn was an interesting console. It launched with a very, very, very small window of games. I think it only had like between 3 and 5 launch games, and there's a lot of really expensive and rare games on that console, like Panzer Dragoon. It also has Daytona USA, which is one of my favorites. Knight. It came with the big 3D control pad. Where would you rank the Sega Saturn?
So I never got a chance to mess around with a Sega Saturn, but given the way that Sega launched that, I'm going to give it pity points. Okay. Because they released a 32X, and then like right after that, they're like a year later, they're like, hey, here's the Sega Saturn.
Yeah, I know, right?
So it's like, man, for the everybody wins trophy for that, I'm gonna put it in A.
An A.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it the pity points, bump it up from B to A.
I don't think it needs pity points. I mean, because it's a console that really, as Marky Mark says, fizzled out after a year. I mean, if you look at the software on that particular console, there's like maybe 5 good games on there.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So we've got Skelly right in the chat. Clockwork Knights. That was a launch game. There's also Bug, which is another platformer, and then Gex. I loved Gex, but I played Gex on. I think Gex was a N64 game for me that I played that on that. That was a good multi-plat game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I played it on PC. That was for my brief stint in PC gaming.
So if we look up Sega Saturn games, because I've had a Sega Saturn before, and I only remember buying a few games. So you've got Panzer Dragoon Saga,
Wipeout, 2097 was on there.
Sonic Jam, that was a fighting game. Nights into Dream, Sonic R, Burning Rangers. I've never played that because that's really It's a really expensive game. Shining Force 3, Daytona USA. I like that one.
I mean, Resident Evil was on it.
Oh yeah, it was. Mega Man X4. That's a really expensive one.
Wasn't Grandia?
Grandia 2 was on. Wait, Sega Saturn Grandia. No, Grandia was Grandia 2 was on Dreamcast. Grandia. I'm pretty it was on Sega Saturn. So that's a good one. I love that game. Symphony of the Night was also on Saturn as well.
Oh, I'm looking here. It looks like SMT 1 maybe?
Really?
It says here Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Soul Hackers.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's the first thing for it, first iteration, but that's looking like one.
Very interesting. Well, I mean, it has a better lineup than everything else in the B tier. Put it this way.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I kind of say that we put it in A tier. I'm happy to kind of give you that because there's actually a lot of great games on there from what I can see. So let's leave that in A.
All right.
So we're getting into some other territory. These are some consoles that if you haven't really known much of what we're talking about now we're really going to get into that. Virtual Boy.
Oh man, it's one that it's on my radar to try to find. Even if it's broken and doesn't work, I want it.
Yeah.
The Virtual Boy was, I think, Nintendo's first flop. So
I agree.
That has that going for it, but it was the first iteration into VR. At least the I want to say first iteration into like affordable VR. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where you can buy it off the shelf, take it home, hold your face up to it, and play.
Yeah.
I would give Virtual Boy a solid B.
A B.
Truthfully,
Okay.
a B. I mean, it did things that nobody else. It did stuff no other console or no other company was doing at the time, at least from like the big hitters. Unfortunately, it brought on another console made by a different company, but the same guy who designed it went on to design another handheld that unfortunately he didn't get a chance to see come to fruition. But other than that, man, I'd give Virtual Boy a B. I mean, it has some wonderful games. I think that's where Wario Land is. Like
Wario Land and Mario Tennis are really like the only two games that I would recommend playing on there. I think there's also a bowling game. But the library of games on the Virtual Boy are so limited. I think there's only like 20 or so games on the Virtual Boy, and some of them are really crazy expensive. I wanted to buy a Virtual Boy not long ago, but they're like insanely expensive, and some of them actually don't even work properly. So I don't know. Personally, I would probably put Virtual Boy in the C tier because it was such a. I feel like it's a console that came out and it promised a lot. But it really underdelivered, like a really underdelivered. So I don't know if you would agree with me there, but
I mean, I didn't it also give people like wild headaches and things like I mean, I could honestly see it being bumped down to a C. I could agree with that.
Let's do that. So, there were only 22 games for the system. Came out in 1996. So. Here's the write-up on Wikipedia. The Virtual Boy is a 32-bit tabletop portable game console developed and manufactured by Nintendo, released in 1995. It was marketed as the first console capable of displaying stereoscopic 3D graphics. Why they decided to go with red is just crazy because for those who don't know, like it displayed all the games in a red kind of like Game Boy-y looking graphic, but like it was very hard to see. And I've only ever played it once. I don't know. It's not my kind of thing. So we'll leave that there. In that same vein, we have the Game Boy Color.
Okay. A tier.
I agree with that.
No, it did. All it did was play games in color. It wasn't really anything special. You know, it was the same style graphics or sprites. I mean, just in color.
I mean, some games were obviously put on the Game Boy Color, and it was obviously a different console, so it did expand upon what the Game Boy did. And I like my first Game Boy console was the teal one back in 1998. I got that on Christmas Day, and I got Pokemon Blue as well. So like the Game Boy Color was the Pokemon console, and man, I tell you what, that was a hell of a thing back in the day. I mean, were you part of the whole Pokemon experience?
Oh, dude, I as a kid, I was lucky enough to have both versions at Christmas every time they were released.
Yeah.
One family member would buy one and the other would buy the other. So like, I knew to look for those little boxes, and I'm like, I bet it's Pokemon. And I'd be like, oh, cool, it's Pokemon Red. Then I'd go over to my aunt and uncle's house and go, wow, it's Pokemon Blue.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was, I can definitely agree with that being the Pokemon console, because like Red and Blue will always be my favorites, but
for sure,
when you got into Silver, Gold, Crystal, that was cool. Mm-hmm. You know, that was the first time that you had post game stuff, at least to my knowledge.
Oh yeah, I loved how not only did it continue after you finished the Elite Four and whatever his name was at the end of Gold and Silver, but then you also went back to the Kanto region, and you like you could play in there. Like that was insane to me, and I've never been able to find the game that captures that same feeling of like, oh my god, I can go back to this world again.
Same,
so
same.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a solid A. But there's also a couple of handhelds that came out around that same time. There's the Neo Geo Pocket, which came out in '98, and then the Pocket Color, which came out in '99. Where would you rank those?
I would put the Neo Geo Pocket as B, and then the Color in A, because I would love to try to find a Color. They're so expensive, and there's nothing really crazy to it other than, again, like the Game Boy Color, play games in color.
I love that thing, man. The little arcade clicky stick on that thing is probably, you know, I love my Super Nintendo D-pad, but that click stick is just so satisfying. Like
I was just about to say it's a satisfying experience to,
that's so good
to use one of those.
Okay, so now we're getting into the late 90s here. There's a couple of weird consoles here. This one, the Tapwave Zodiac. I'm going to throw that in E tier. That looks like a garbage ripoff of the Wonder Swan. We've got Game.com. I'm throwing that in E. There's also the R Zone. Wasn't that a Toys R Us console? Do you know anything about that?
I think so. I think that was an R Zone or a Toys R Us. The R Zone was a Toys R Us thing, like one of those like Tiger Electronics.
Yeah, that came out in 1995. The R Zone. I don't know anything about that. There's not many games on this. There's a Star Wars games, Virtua Cop, Batman, Daytona USA. Really? Okay, that's weird. I don't know anything about that. The R Zone. So let's go ahead and throw that in E tier.
Okay.
Didn't really make enough of a splash, I suppose. Let's see. We also have the Wonder Swan and the Wonder Swan Color. I don't know when they came out.
Oh, well, the Wonder Swan came out in '99.
Yeah,
and it's hard for me to rank it anywhere else because I own one.
Yeah,
and that's to me that's A. Mainly because it was only released in Japan. It was released under Bandai.
Yes.
The guy who made the Virtual Boy designed this, and then they went on to do there was the Wonder Swan Color, then the Wonder Swan Crystal. Mm-hmm. All of them only going up by hundreds of dollars each iteration you go. Now, before they were probably dirt cheap, but dude, they had different. They had a cart that you could reprogram your own game and then enter that in contests, and if it did well enough, Bandai would publish your game.
That's really cool.
They had attachments for on the side here. If you look, there's like a port. I don't know how good that's gonna pick up. But there's a port there, and that port would connect to your cell phone, and you could go on the internet.
Oh.
So like it had some interesting things. It was another one of those like the Lynx where you could play it in landscape or portrait mode. It's a unique console. I would say personally, I would say A, but if you want to throw it in B, you could throw it in B. So because it was a Japanese only thing.
So the Wonderful Swan color is the same thing, but just in color then?
Yes. And then the Crystal is the same thing, but with a better display.
Okay. So let's just say we throw those both in B tier.
Okay.
We have a handful of consoles left here. So let's move on to the Sega Dreamcast. I love the Dreamcast. I love the Dreamcast. What are your thoughts on the Dreamcast?
I know nothing of the Dreamcast other than I have a friend who, for the first couple years of owning a Dreamcast, he held the controller upside down because every other controller had, like, this is the newer SNES, but they always had the wire coming out of the top.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the Dreamcast controller, where's the wire come out of?
At the bottom.
So he would play it legit with the D-pad on the right and the buttons, and he's like, "Well, this is weird. I guess this is how they want me to play it."
It has the little notch on the back of the console, so you can hook the wire in there, man. Like that's what that's there for.
He was a young kid. He didn't know any better. He thought this is how it was intended to play. So for the first couple years, he was playing it upside down.
I love the Dreamcast. I remember getting one not too far off launch in 1999. I remember, I don't know if it was pre-ordered or not, but I remember my mother getting me the Sonic Adventure pack. It came with Sonic Adventure in the in the box, and it was the boxed theme of Sonic Adventure. That was a really cool console, and that was one that made connecting to the internet a little bit more mainstream, because you had like the internet disc and all that stuff, and now we're getting into the point where consoles started to have internet connectivity. The games on Dreamcast are really good. There's a lot on there, like Power Stone 2, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. You also had what's the party game? It's like the Mario Party version of Sonic. I can't remember.
I'm looking at the game list here just to see. I do see Phantasy Star Online, and I've heard about that game.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. Shenmue is really good. That was an amazing game. There's Skies of Arcadia, which I've tried to get into. I can't really latch onto that. You've also got Resident Evil, Code Veronica, Marvel vs. Capcom, Crazy Taxi.
You can't forget about Jet Set Radio.
That's right. We also have Grandia 2.
Okay.
We also have Space Channel 5. So there's a lot of cool games on there. One of the more interesting ones is Seaman. Seaman is a really interesting one where you basically raise a virtual fish with a face that talks to you. You can talk to it through the mic. Really? There's actually a really great video on that, which I'd recommend checking out on Metal Jesus's channel, because he played the game in its entirety, and he documented it over the course of a couple of months or weeks or something like that.
Oh my God.
So I think for what the Dreamcast tried to do at that time, I want to say it's a really high A tier. And I the only reason I don't put it in S tier is because that console just kind of made a splash in the market, and then within 2 years it was dead. And that's thanks to the PlayStation 2. Where do we want to put that one?
That one is 1,000% an S tier. I mean, it still is the number one best-selling console.
No question.
And you look at it, you could play audio CDs on your PS1. You could do that on PS2. You could play DVDs, and a lot of people bought that just for a DVD player, and that's wild to think about. You know what I mean?
We've got Skelly Wren in the chat saying if PS2 didn't play DVDs, it would not have sold over 155 million units. I totally agree with that, because the PS2 that played DVDs was actually cheaper than DVD players at that time, if I recall. And not only that, it was PlayStation 1 backwards compatible. So you're getting a DVD player, a PlayStation 1 system, and a PlayStation 2 system. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it weren't DVD capable, would it have sold that much? I don't know. But I remember, like, now that I've gotten into PS2 collecting, I'm really finding myself that I'm actually quite nostalgic for the PlayStation 2 because there's a lot of great games on there.
That's something I was about to say. If it didn't sell good because of the fact it played DVDs. The games that came out on that, you had the birth of so many wonderful franchises. You have Ratchet and Clank, you have Sly Cooper, you have Jak and Daxter. I've never played them, but I've seen the gameplay of them. I have them. I have the left-handed versions of them, so I will play them at some point. But you have all these wonderful games and wonderful franchises that have. They either like look at Gran Turismo. I feel the PS2 version was the best version of that franchise.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto, the PC ports and all that whatever, or not PC ports, the PC versions weren't too good. They were all top down.
Yep.
They went to Sony. They pitched it to another console maker, which we can also talk about after this. But they pitched it to them and they turned it down. Sony said, okay, why not? And then I remember it was the first year the PS2 came out. Grand Theft Auto 3 launched, I don't want to say with it, or it might have come out like maybe that like a couple months after, but I wanted it so bad and I had to wait a whole year. I was like, I want it for Christmas. And they're like, we can't find one. Sorry. So, yeah, it was wild. I have mine downstairs in the basement just because I have nowhere to put it up here.
It's a great console, man. I just bought one and I'm like, there's so many games. Like you can actually buy a lot of games for a really good price. There are some games that are more expensive than others, but like, man, I could talk about PS2 forever, but like it's a great console, easily S tier. PlayStation 2 also competed with the GameCube and the Xbox. Xbox, I'm quite comfortable to say B tier.
Yes, absolutely.
You had Halo 1 and Halo 2, you had Shenmue 2. I feel like the Dreamcast died and it was like reincarnated as the Xbox, because I remember there was some sort of discussion with bringing some Dreamcast games over to Xbox, and they did that, but I feel like it maybe went a little bit deeper than that. It retained the same button layout as the Dreamcast, kind of. So aside from like Halo 1 and 2, I feel like there wasn't a whole lot that I actually played on my Xbox back in the day.
No, I remember I had an Xbox late in its life when they how when consoles are towards the end of their lifespan, they drop down to like $100. That's when I got a GameCube and an Xbox.
Yeah.
And Xbox was cool. It had a party game on it I loved. It was Fusion Frenzy. That was a whole lot of fun, but I mean, there wasn't really much that ran super, super good on it. I mean, it struggled a little for what it promised.
Did have Xbox Live though, which was I remember getting Xbox Live the day that it came out, and having that with Halo 2. Like that was an experience that getting on the headset and chatting with people on your Xbox was just like unlike anything else at that time. And like I was only
crazy.
I don't even probably just over 10 years old at that point. That was a great time. But in terms of legacy, I always feel like the Xbox has always just been second to Sony or second to Nintendo. So like there's really no, as Milla in the chat says, Xbox doesn't really have any strong exclusives really. And I feel like they've just kind of coasted for the last 20 years. I mean, they've got Forza and stuff like that, but I feel like there's really been no killer app on Xbox other than Halo. But of course with the GameCube, I mean, like, that's A tier for me all day.
Yeah, I even though I had mine super late, I can agree. It's A tier. It had some wonderful things. I mean, Wind Waker was and is still one of the I want to say top 5 Zeldas for me.
It's my top Zelda, 100%.
Oh, really?
Yep.
See, mine is still Minish Cap, man. My top Zelda is Minish Cap all day.
I never played it.
Huh. You need to play it. It'll change your mind.
I do. You know, I have fond memories of the GameCube. I remember trading in my entire Dreamcast and N64 library with consoles at Electronics Boutique at the Schuylkill Valley Mall back in 2001 to get the GameCube for $3. And like, that's a total ripoff when you think about it now.
Oh yeah.
And I remember getting that with Super Smash Bros. Melee, which was a game that I played hundreds and hundreds of hours of. And I still have a copy of Melee with the GameCube now, which is just behind me, tucked away behind the TV. I love the GameCube. I love what it stood for, but it just, I feel like it never quite beat the PlayStation 2 if I want to be like a really harsh critic about it. And I love the GameCube library more than anybody else. You know, well,
I mean, look at it's a perfect example of what Nintendo does best, and they make an affordable console with tech that isn't cutting edge. It's stuff that's been around for a little bit more. To make things more affordable, they went with a mini disc.
That's right.
That's like saying, all right, we're gonna sell all Betamax, but everybody's going VHS. Like. Yeah. It worked, but it didn't last too long. And that I feel like if the GameCube was from a hardware standpoint, if it had the full CD-ROM in it,
could have done more.
It would have. It could have absolutely have done more. And it's just Nintendo being Nintendo, man.
Speaking of non-Nintendo things that begin with an N, where do we put the N gauge?
The N gauge. Wasn't that little taco thing?
It was a little taco shaped console that was like a cell phone, but it wasn't. Yeah. I wanted one for a long time just to have.
I did too. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, so the N gauge, for those that don't know, I'm going to bring up. N gauge was a console released by Nokia, and it came out in 2002. It was an attempt to lure people away from the Game Boy Advance, which we're going to talk about in a second here. It died pretty quickly. It only had like a 4-year lifespan. But it's one of those ones that like it's a really quirky console to collect for, and I think it's actually quite hard to collect for, from if my memory serves me correctly. So it's a console that made a really quick splash in an effort to dethrone, King N in the handheld market. So I'd probably say it's a good solid. I'd probably say it's a good solid D tier.
Okay, all right, I can agree with that.
I know there's a Sonic game on there that I wanted to play.
I wanted for all the Tom Clancy stuff.
Oh, gosh,
that's when I was big into like Splinter Cell and all that.
And look at you now, you're into JRPGs now.
I know.
Now that I've put an extra row on the D tier, it's obscured the E tier down below. So if I put anything else in the E tier, I'll have to scroll down. So that obviously competed with the Game Boy Advance. Where did we throw the Game Boy Advance?
I'm gonna go with B.
For real?
It's like it had wonderful games. It's a wonderful console, but at that time, for handhelds, there wasn't really anything going up against it. So I mean, maybe all right. If you really want to, we could put it in A.
I'll put it in A because it is a Super Nintendo on the go, and I mentioned that earlier. Where
essentially,
Game Boy was like the NES on the go. Game Boy Advance is like the Super Nintendo on the go. There's like so many great games. You had Sonic Advance 1, 2, and 3. You also had Golden Sun 1 and 2. You had your Pokemon games. You had Fire Red and Leaf Green, and then Sapphire and Ruby and Emerald. There's a lot of other great games for the GBA. Mother 3 is one of them, which of course is a Japanese exclusive, but I've done Game Boy Advance mods and all that stuff. So it's a fun console. Oh, yeah. Wario Land is another one. Mila says in chat. So
I'm telling you, man, Minish Cap was on it too. It's a wonderful game.
I need to get on that.
Yeah, I could definitely see A. I mean, like I said, A or B. I'm happy either way.
Where do we throw the PSP? Where does the PSP go in there? Because PSP kind of competed with the Game Boy Advance.
See, I think I beg to differ, man. I think the PSP competed with the DS.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because I'm torn. It's either S tier or A tier because you essentially had a PS2 on the go.
I personally want to put that in S tier.
Then do it, because you could watch movies on it, you could listen to music, you could even go on the internet with it on the go.
I loved my PSP, and I want to say that I played PSP more than DS. It had Crisis. I feel like this is the thing, is like PSP, if you really want to look at the library of games, there's only so many killer apps on there, and like the best game on PSP is Crisis Core. But I love what the PSP did. It took that home console experience and let you take it on the go. I mean, even if we look at what the PSP was capable of graphically for a console that came out almost 20 years ago, oh my God, it's so good. So good.
I mean, it did, and it promised something that we all wanted. We all, as kids, we all wanted that full console experience on the go.
Yeah.
You wanted to be able to take these big AAA games with you wherever you went, and that was a way it offered it to you. But it was unfortunately overshadowed by the DS. It was the console war is funny between Sony, because it for the longest time it was Sony and Nintendo, and now it's like Sony and Microsoft, and that's it's funny to see that shift.
I love the PSP because it was PlayStation 1 backwards compatible, and it also had other left-handed capabilities, which is the same thing with the Vita. That supersedes the original lifetime, and that's why I liked that more than the DS. So I'd probably say the DS is A tier. I mean, the DS sold way more than PSP, and the DS I think is just right behind the PS2 in terms of like, millions of units sold over time. But the DS, man, that thing's a tank. But I got to give it to the PSP, man. The PSP is just,
I can agree.
Ranks a little bit higher. I do love the DS though.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So now we're into the in my mind is still next gen, because this is where my brain is. We've got the Wii, PS3, and the 360. So let's start with the Wii. Where do you want to put the Wii?
S all day.
I agree with you.
It offered some. It was innovative in the fact that it made you get up and move to play a game. It was the closest thing you could get to augmented reality, virtual reality. I mean, playing Twilight Princess on that was wild, because like, I have to swing the controller to hit somebody. Like, what? I know. Or, all right, here's how you're gonna shoot the bow. You're gonna hold the nunchuck and pull back, and it's like, well, hold on. Like, wait, I have to do. And it was I don't know. It was so cool. I mean, it was the first console that I actually had my grandmother say, like, let's play tennis. Let's bowl. It's 2 in the afternoon. Do you want to bowl? Like, that was, it brought a lot of people together and a lot of non-gamers together.
Exactly. Too. And it was, if you want to look at, it basically mainstreamed games, and it yes, as Marky Mark says in the chat, it had a lot of shovelware on there.
Oh, it did.
There's a lot of dime a dozen games on there, but the cultural impact that the Wii had, I think to this day has not been replicated yet. It made grandma want to play bowling at 2 PM, like you said. I mean, so that to me, it's something that transcended games and just became a part of pop culture. So that's why I give that S tier all day long. Whereas the PS3, man, I might get a little bit of hate for this, but I think PS3 is straight B tier.
It is. It was Sony. Sony just came off of the success from the PS2. They said, you know what? We're gonna make this PS3, and it's gonna be the greatest thing you've ever had in your living room, bedroom, basement, wherever. And it's gonna come at a cost. And if you can't afford it, get a second job. Don't know what to tell you. I feel like that. they were very cocky with that system,
for sure.
And I honestly preferred the 360 over the PS3.
Yep, and that's why I think we'll put 360 in the A tier. I didn't get a PS3 straight away. I got a PS3 a couple years afterwards, and
same.
360 I had before the PS3, and there was a lot to play on the 360. I had my Project Gotham Racing 3 and 4. I love those.
Yep.
I had Halo 3. I remember when that came out when I was a freshman in high school with the Forge mode. That was awesome.
That was so cool.
So many great 360 games that I played back in the day. And if I was to collect for a PS3, I don't even know where I would start, honestly. I don't know what I would get.
I mean, I remember playing what's the one it's like getting to be like Skyrim now. The one where you're Last of Us, because I want to say I forget the name of it because I actually don't like that game.
Oh, really?
But we can get into that on another show. It didn't have much, man. PS3 did not have much. I mean, it had a couple Sly Cooper and a couple Ratchet and Clank games, but it didn't offer anything crazy other than a wild price tag. The only downfall to 360 was that stupid Red Ring of Death, man.
I know. That was the only downfall from that time. I mean, like 360 all the way in terms of, just what it allowed people to be able to do. I mean, like it was a really great console for online as well. So I loved it well and truly more than anything else back at the time. And the hype for Halo 3 when that was going, man, that was insane.
Yes. I remember waiting at a midnight launch to get Halo 3. It was a wild time.
So we've got a handful of consoles left. I know we're getting close to like almost 2 hours into this episode. I know. So we might kind of rapid fire. I know it's getting late there for you too.
We're good.
Let's see. 3DS.
That one I would say A tier. Because it was Nintendo dabbling in their 3D again, and people were still getting headaches. Some people were just complaining about the 3D, or they just weren't using it at all, and it was just an upgraded normal DS for them. So
I loved it. I mean, I remember getting one in 2011 and playing Ocarina of Time 3D. There are a lot of great 3DS games. And now is the time to actually collect for 3DS if you can, if you're wanting to. But I felt like it just never. It was very popular, man. It was very popular, but I always gravitated towards my PSP.
Yes,
and if I was to choose between the two, I'd probably still pick the PSP. And as Marky Mark says in the chat, it was a definitive DS upgrade. But there are a lot of killer apps too. You've got your Professor Laytons, you've got your Phoenix Wrights, you've got your Zeldas, your Mario Kart. Like it's a great console, but for me personally, I just feel like it's just doesn't leave that A tier range.
No, and for me, the reason it doesn't leave that A tier range is the Vita.
Oh,
because that released the same year. It was like Nintendo and Sony knew what they were doing. They're like, all right, we're gonna release the 3DS. They're like, all right, we're gonna release the Vita.
So where do we put the Vita?
Man, see, I own 4 of them, so that's an S tier. Oh yeah, that's S tier all day long. But it's S tier because of the innovative things it did. It had full touch screen. It had full rear touch, which what has that now? Now you have like rear buttons or grip buttons, but that's about it. It played PS1, PSP. If you can, liberate your Vita, you can do a whole bunch of things with it.
Well, what if we look at it from the capability of just the standard Vita, like with the games that it has in that library? Does that still make it S tier?
Oh, absolutely, because you could play your PS3 or PS4. You could stream to it. And that was wild to see, like kind of hey, here's an OS feature where you can remote play. That kind of led into that. Here's a full console game you can play handheld.
So it's between S tier and A tier in the chat. I mean, we've got DJ Bob and Kenzel be saying that it's A tier. Marky Mark says that it can't hit S tier because of the games. This is the thing is if I look at the Vita just based on a console with no games, it's really cool and really innovative. You can play PSP and PS1 games on that thing, and of course, if you liberate it, I mean, there's plenty of other options as well. And it also has remote play too.
But I mean, one of the games that comes to mind, Tearaway.
Yeah,
that game incorporated all the hardware specs of that thing, and it was so crazy to just like run your finger on the back of the thing, and you're seeing, a virtual finger pop through the whole scene, and I don't know. To me, it's S tier because it opened up a lot of things for Sony, but Sony just didn't want to support it.
So, moving on to next gen here. Let's start with the Wii U, actually, because the Wii U came out in 2013 and it kind of competed with the 360 and PS3. Oh, wait, when did the Wii U come out? It was 2012, was it?
Yeah, 2012.
So the Wii U came out before Xbox One and PS4 by a year. Where do we throw the Wii U?
Oof. Man, I don't know. A or B. I'm fine with either or. Only because it did a lot of cool things. The fact you could have your TV on and then use the gamepad as a totally different thing. Or if you played some party games with people, what the guy holding the gamepad would see is different than the person sitting next to you watching the TV. It did a lot of interesting things, and like you said earlier, and at the start of the show, you could turn your TV on, play everything on the gamepad, and if you had range, you could walk wherever in your house.
I agree. So I'd say Wii U is B tier because Nintendo, as Marky Mark says in the chat, Nintendo was the only reason that the Wii U kept afloat because it had first party games, and Wii U died quicker than it should have, but it was obviously a good stepping stone to the Switch, which we'll talk about soon. So I'm happy to leave Wii U in the B tier. It didn't do enough. And it was marketed really poorly. I mean, if you want to look at the Wii, and then people would have bought the Wii U thinking it's an add-on to the Wii. I mean, yes, it was backwards compatible, but I personally, I'd probably put Wii U in A tier for me, but like, I'm just looking at it from the understanding of what it was and how it did overall. It just was, it fell short. It was a experiment for Nintendo, more or less. So that being said, PS4 and Xbox One, the other two competing ones from that gen, where do we put PS4 and Xbox One? Well,
you're getting into the part in video games where things kind of started to equal out a little bit. To where you're solely looking at games from like an exclusive or the consoles from an exclusive standpoint.
Yeah.
What did PS4 offer versus what did Xbox One offer? And truthfully, I would put PS4 as A tier.
Okay. Xbox One, I'm happy to put that as a C tier.
Really?
Yeah, I know that's really low, but they marketed it really poorly at the start, and personally, I feel there's like 0 killer apps on the Xbox One. I always gravitated more towards PlayStation 4. I've had both of them, and I just feel like there's never really anything for me on Xbox nowadays. And it's like my breakup with Xbox started with Xbox One.
Really? See, I would have put it at the start of its life cycle. I would put it in B, and then when Game Pass came out, I would move it to A.
Okay.
Because that was the killer app. Game Pass, if it wasn't for Game Pass, I don't think they would have as many Xbox One units sold.
I agree.
And technically, the PlayStation 4, as of I think a week or two ago, was still selling because you can't buy a PS5.
Exactly. So the PS4 is still going. I mean, almost 10 years on. There are a lot of great games on the PS4. I just feel like if we're looking at libraries, like PlayStation has a much better library, but Xbox, they flipped the tables there with Game Pass. Like they kind of realized that their original strategy wasn't doing them any favors, so they obviously changed direction. So PS4 A tier, then I'll leave the Xbox One there in B tier. I'll compromise with you.
Okay.
So we've got the Switch, the PS5, and the Xbox Series X/S.
So I would put Switch in S tier. Reason being, look at what it has done for the market overall.
Mm-hmm.
You have all of these handheld gaming consoles, the Steam Deck being one of them. And I know I wanted to joke and throw Steam Deck in here.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, where would you put that? Oh, man, I mean, on the Steam Deck, it would be here. But truthfully, without Switch, I don't think you would have all these like Ioneos or Iron Odins or Valve or, Valve Steam Decks without the Switch.
Sure.
And the Switch offered what me as a handheld fanboy has been wanting all my life is a full game on the go, portable, that I can sit on my couch and just watch a movie and play my AAA game.
Totally agree. And if it weren't for the Wii U, I mean, the Switch wouldn't have. If the Wii U didn't walk, the Switch couldn't have run.
Mm-hmm.
And even last week playing Xenoblade 3 handheld, like, with a Satisfy grip, like that's to me now one of the more definitive experiences that I've had as a gamer, just because of the way that it allows me to enjoy content either docked or handheld on the go. And it's Nintendo's. I don't know if it's sold more than the Wii, but I wouldn't be surprised if long term it sells more than the Wii. Like, Nintendo has really had a hit on their hands. So,
well, let me ask you this: if you didn't have a Switch, would you game as much as you have been?
No, 100% not, because the Switch has had a lot of killer content, and PS5 has had, for me, no games.
I know there's nothing,
no games, and I'm personally happy to put PS5 in the B tier.
I can agree with that, because the only thing PlayStation has going for it is their haptic triggers. That's it. Everything else, like, they go, oh, it has haptic feedback. Okay, so does Switch. It's. I know. There's really nothing for PS5. I can't tell you the last time I turned mine on. I mean, I guess I can. It was Easter to play Tiny Tina. That was it.
I play mine comes on every day. It's our YouTube machine, and so my son's had more use of the PS5 than I have, and I've played it, with the Final Fantasy remakes and all that stuff, and like that's all cool, but I don't own any PS5 games anymore. I traded those all in for Earthbound a couple of months ago. And I haven't really felt any regret at all. And yet everyone wants one, says DJ Bob. So I think it's more of the covet kind of thing. That people want the next gen thing. But there's like, to me, there's nothing appealing on there other than Final Fantasy VII Remake, which you can get on PS4. And Steam Deck. Also, I was going to say, you can also get it on PC too. And that's that DJ Bob brings up a good point. Everybody wants one. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, there's no games for it. Are there no games for PS5 because it's so hard to get? That they're like, why don't we wait till more units sell, more it gets in the hands of more people? I think
before we start, really diving in the games for it.
I think there's a bit of that. Yeah. I mean, there's like the last real killer game that came out on PS5 as a PS5 exclusive was I don't even know, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I don't there's nothing that comes to mind for that.
The best game on PS5 is Astro's Playroom.
It's the one that comes baked into the game.
Exactly. It's the one that comes baked in, and it's the best one.
So where does that leave Xbox Series X and S? For me, I couldn't. I've had an Xbox One, and I traded that in, and I don't see myself wanting an Xbox anymore. Really, there's nothing on there that I feel that I need that I couldn't get on like a Steam Deck, for example.
And that's something I feel too. Like, as much as I want a Series X, my Xbox One S is fine. If I want to do something console wise.
Yeah,
and anything or everything else, and basically anything else I do on my Steam Deck. I do xCloud there. A lot of the Microsoft games for Xbox games are on PC because Microsoft is a PC company,
right?
So it's really, to me, it would be it does. And here's the other thing: the Xbox Series X and S as a whole, hardware wise, does a whole lot more than the PS5 does. I mean, they offered a lot more features at launch than the PS5 did. You know what I mean? So I would say that's an A tier console.
Okay. There you go. A tier. I don't disagree with anything you've said, honestly. Like I don't gravitate towards Xbox anymore, but they at least offer two different versions. You have the digital only versus the disc drive version. And the one thing that I haven't mentioned about what Xbox can do now is backwards compatibility. And
yes,
PS5 has PS4 compatibility, but the Xbox can reach all the way back to the original now, which is really cool. So I can grab let's just say I have an Xbox Series X, the one with the disc drive. I can grab an Xbox game, like an original Xbox game, pop that in and play that. So long as it's one of the ones that are supported. So I think that's really cool. So the legacy support is, I think, one of those things that Microsoft has over Sony, definitively for sure. So there you have it. There is our definitive ranked console list. I tell you, this is our longest episode yet. I don't even know how long this is probably a 2-hour episode.
Easily, but this is one that I'm really glad that we got a chance to do, because it's one of those. It's like taking history. You got to know where you've been as a civilization before you can figure out where you're going.
Exactly, and that's why Vectrex is S tier.
I mean, if it was on the list, Steam Deck would be S tier, because I can take the Steam Deck and play all of those.
Yeah. I mean, you can, and that's the real killer app. I mean, it's not necessarily a Switch killer.
No,
but it can become a Switch itself if you know what you're doing. So there you go.
I'll tell you what, this was something I discovered today. We're going to be cutting cable, so we're going to be one of those people. And we went out and bought a bunch of the little Chromecasts or whatever, but it's Walmart's version of the Chromecast.
Okay.
Well, get this, dude. I found out I can run Steam Link on there, and I can stream my Steam Deck to this Chromecast and play my Steam stuff on TV like a Wii U, because the screen stays on the gamepad.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I'm going to definitely be tinkering with that. So stay tuned, folks. I might have some new stuff to talk about in the coming episodes.
Well, there you go. Well, speaking of coming episodes, aside from our definitive thing, we'll have an episode here in a couple of days as a midweek episode with an interview episode, another guest we had on. So that'll be out on Thursday of this week. For those listening, way after the fact, I think that'll be August 18th of this year. So that'll be a really cool guest, and that's more retro themed. And of course, we've covered a lot of retro ground today, but we're really exploring the whole is retro relevant thing. So that's a really great episode to look out for. So, man, I tell you what, this is one hell of an episode. It's our longest one yet. I don't know if we'll ever beat this, unless we do an episode 100 celebration where you and I are in the same room doing a live stream like a party.
Dude, we could only hope, man. We could only hope that happens.
I have no doubt. So there you go. I hope everybody's had a great show today. Let's flick over to our quick transition. But for those watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify, thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like and rate. We have 10 5-star ratings on Spotify right now.
We do.
There are people listening to us. We've been streamed in China.
Yo, we're making it big.
Yeah, we're big in China, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. But people are listening.
I'll take it. Hey, I'll take it, man.
Well, there you go. Well, stay tuned, everybody who's watching live for the post show. Thank you again, everybody, for watching and listening, all that stuff. We'll see you in a couple of days for episode 8, which was already in the tank. We've already filmed it. So we'll see you then.